Uli Nwosu had always been a star at her boarding school, excelling in academics, sports, and especially singing. Her voice was renowned among students and teachers alike, bringing her opportunities to perform at major school events. As the annual talent show approached, Uli practiced her songs with the help of her best friend, Chike. They had grown up together, and their bond was unbreakable, or so Uli thought. Deep inside, Chike harbored feelings for her, but he never dared to speak them out loud. Uli, focused on her music and schoolwork, remained blissfully unaware of the tension growing between them. But all of that was about to change with the arrival of a new music teacher. Mr. Duro was different from the other teachers. He was young, vibrant, and had a musical background that impressed even the most skeptical students. The moment he set foot in the music room, the atmosphere shifted. His charisma and skill on the piano captivated everyone, including Uli. She found herself drawn to his passion for music and the way he encouraged her to push her limits. Mr. Duro immediately noticed Uli's talent, taking special interest in her. As they worked together to perfect her performance for the talent show, Uli felt a new excitement she hadn't experienced before. But there was something mysterious about him, something that left a strange feeling in the air whenever he smiled at her. As Uli spent more time with Mr. Duro, Chike began to feel uneasy. He noticed how Uli's eyes lit up whenever the music teacher was around, and it bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Chike had always been protective of Uli, but now he felt like he was losing her to this stranger. One afternoon, as they sat under the baobab tree after choir practice, Chike finally voiced his concern. "There's something off about that guy, Uli. Be careful," he said, trying to mask his jealousy as concern for her safety. Uli laughed it off, reassuring Chike that Mr. Duro was just a good teacher who understood her talent. But Chike couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As the days passed, Uli found herself torn between two worlds. On one hand, there was Chike, her loyal best friend who had always been there for her. On the other, Mr. Duro, whose passion for music ignited something new inside her. Her heart was confused, and for the first time in her life, Uli didn't know what she wanted. At night, she lay awake thinking about the two men in her life, unsure of where her heart truly lay. The upcoming talent show, which was supposed to be a celebration of her singing, now felt like a battleground where her emotions were in turmoil. The day of the final rehearsal for the talent show arrived, and Uli was determined to impress. Mr. Duro had been working with her on a new song, one that was far more challenging than anything she had ever performed. As she stood on the stage, preparing to sing, she noticed Chike sitting in the front row, his eyes filled with worry. She tried to push the thought aside and focus on her performance. But as soon as she opened her mouth to sing, a wave of emotion hit her. She wasn't just singing anymore, she was pouring out her heart, and it felt like the entire world was watching. After Uli's stunning performance, Chike couldn't hold back any longer. He pulled her aside, away from the crowd, and finally confessed his feelings. "I've loved you for as long as I can remember, Uli. I can't stand seeing you so close to him," Chike blurted out, his voice shaking with emotion. Uli was stunned. She had always seen Chike as her best friend, her rock, but love. She had never considered it. Her mind raced as she tried to process his words. Could she love Chike? Or was her heart already with Mr. Duro? She wasn't sure, and the confusion made her dizzy. Unbeknownst to Uli, Mr. Duro had secrets of his own. Late at night, after everyone had gone to bed, he would lock himself in the music room, playing songs that echoed with sorrow and loss. His past was a puzzle that no one had yet solved, and he preferred it that way. But as he spent more time with Uli, he realized that his feelings for her were growing. This wasn't just a teacher-student relationship anymore, it was something deeper, something dangerous. He knew he had to be careful, but the pull of Uli's voice and her spirit was too strong to resist. Yet, his past threatened to unravel everything. One afternoon, while cleaning out the music room, Uli stumbled upon an old letter tucked behind the piano. The envelope was weathered, and the handwriting on it looked familiar, though she couldn't place it. Curiosity got the best of her, and she opened it. The contents revealed a shocking truth about Mr. Duro's past, a past that tied him to someone from Uli's family. Her heart pounded as she read the letter over and over, trying to make sense of the connection. This secret, if revealed, could change everything, not just between her and Mr. Duro, but for her entire family. Unable to keep the secret to herself, Uli confronted Mr. Duro after class the next day. "Who are you really?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Mr. Duro's face paled as he realized what she had found. He tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he handed Uli a photograph from his wallet, the picture of him and a woman who looked strikingly similar to Uli's mother. "I knew your mother," he said softly, his eyes full of pain. Uli's world shattered in that moment. How could this be? The man she had grown so close to, the man she might be falling for, was somehow connected to her family's past. Uli couldn't keep the discovery to herself. That evening, she sat down with her mother and showed her the letter and the photograph. Her mother's face went white as she took in the image. "Duro. I never thought I'd see him again," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Uli pressed her for answers, and slowly, her mother revealed a part of her past that she had kept hidden for years. Mr. Duro had been a close friend, almost like family, but something had happened between them, the betrayal that neither had fully recovered from. Uli's heart sank as she realized the depth of the secrets that had been kept from her. As her mother unraveled the story of her past with Mr. Duro, Uli learned that their connection ran deeper than she ever imagined. Her mother had once been in love with Mr. Duro, but their relationship ended in betrayal. He had left without explanation, and Uli's mother had buried the memories, choosing to move on with her life. Now, years later, Mr. Duro's return brought all those painful memories rushing back. Uli felt torn between loyalty to her mother and her growing feelings for him. How could she reconcile her love for music and the man who had hurt her family so deeply? Chike sensed the distance growing between him and Uli. He knew about the letter, though Uli hadn't told him everything. Frustrated and hurt, Chike confronted her again, this time with a harsh ultimatum. "You need to choose, Uli. Him or me. I can't stand by and watch you fall for someone who has caused your family so much pain." His words stung, but they were also true. Uli knew she had to make a decision. Chike had always been there for her, but her heart was more conflicted than ever. She wasn't ready to let go of either of them. The long-awaited talent show finally arrived, and Uli stood backstage, her nerves on edge. This performance wasn't just about her singing anymore, it was a culmination of everything she had been through. Her heart was torn between Chike's ultimatum and the secrets she had learned about Mr. Duro. As she took the stage, the spotlight blinding her for a moment, Uli closed her eyes and let her voice guide her. The audience was mesmerized as she sang, but behind her perfect performance was a girl in turmoil, searching for answers in her music. As Uli reached the crescendo of her song, something unexpected happened. A memory flashed before her eyes, one she had never recalled before. It was of her mother and Mr. Duro, laughing together as he played the piano, a time when things were still good between them. The emotion of the moment overwhelmed her, and for the first time, Uli realized how deeply the past had shaped her present. Her voice wavered for a second, but she pushed through, finishing the song to thunderous applause. But Uli knew that something inside her had shifted, she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Backstage, after the show, Uli found herself surrounded by friends and admirers, all congratulating her on her stellar performance. But her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about the revelation she had on stage. She knew she needed to confront her feelings, not just for Chike and Mr. Duro, but also for herself. After everyone had left, Uli sat alone in the empty auditorium, reflecting on the whirlwind her life had become. She wasn't ready for what came next, but she knew it was inevitable. The next day, Mr. Duro approached Uli after class. His face was solemn, and Uli could sense the weight of his guilt. "I owe you and your mother an explanation," he said quietly. They walked together to the music room, where Mr. Duro finally opened up about the past. He had loved Uli's mother, but circumstances had torn them apart. His departure was not by choice, and for years he had lived with the regret of not being able to explain why. Now, seeing Uli every day was like a painful reminder of the life he had lost. But Uli had no words. She was tired of secrets, tired of lies. Chike had been avoiding Uli ever since the talent show. He couldn't stand the thought of losing her to Mr. Duro, especially after everything they had been through together. But Uli knew she needed to talk to him to clear the air. One evening, she found him in their usual spot under the baobab tree. "We need to talk," Uli said softly. Chike's eyes were filled with sadness but also understanding. He knew what was coming. As they talked, Uli realized that while she cared deeply for Chike, she couldn't give him what he wanted. Her heart belonged to something else now, her music, her future. Uli's decision to focus on herself didn't come easily, but it brought her a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in a long time. She knew that her relationship with Mr. Duro was complicated, and while her feelings for him were real, she couldn't ignore the history he shared with her family. Likewise, her bond with Chike would always be special, but it was no longer the center of her world. For the first time, Uli felt free to choose her own path, not one dictated by love or loyalty, but by her own dreams and desires. With Chike gone, Uli had time to reflect on everything. She spent hours in the music room, playing songs that helped her process her feelings. Slowly, she began to understand that the choice she had to make wasn't just about Chike or Mr. Duro. It was about her, what she wanted, who she wanted to be, and how she wanted to live her life. Uli realized that her love for music was the one constant in her life, and it was through music that she would find her way forward. Uli poured herself into her music like never before. She realized that, more than anything, she wanted to pursue her passion and create her own path, independent of her relationships with Chike and Mr. Duro. She didn't want her identity to be defined by her feelings for either man. As she performed at the school's final concert of the year, Uli sang not for anyone else, but for herself. The audience watched in awe as her voice soared, full of power and emotion. It was in that moment that Uli finally found the clarity she had been searching for. After a few weeks, Chike returned to school. He was different, more at peace with himself. Uli welcomed him back with open arms, relieved that their friendship had survived the storm. They talked for hours about everything that had happened, and for the first time, Uli felt free to express herself fully. She told him about her decision to focus on her music and her future. Chike listened, smiling softly. "I'll always be here for you, Uli." No matter what, he said, and this time, Uli knew he meant it without expectation. As the school year drew to a close, Mr. Duro announced that he would be leaving. His contract was ending, and he had decided to move on to a new school. Uli was saddened by the news but also relieved in a way. His departure gave her the space she needed to continue growing as an artist and a person. Before he left, Mr. Duro and Uli shared one last conversation. "Thank you for everything," Uli said softly. "You helped me find my voice." Mr. Duro smiled, knowing that Uli had found more than just her voice, she had found herself. As Uli stood at the edge of the school grounds, watching the sunset over the horizon, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. She didn't have all the answers, but she had learned that life wasn't about having everything figured out. It was about embracing the journey, with all its twists and turns. Uli knew that her future, like her music, was still unwritten. But she was ready to face it, one note at a time. As she walked away, humming a new melody, she knew that her story was only just beginning.